Right now, we're going to bring in Washington Post political reporter Dave Weigel, and each and every Tuesday, he has really kind of shepherded us through some of these races. He's helped us understand them. And Dave, good to see you yet again. We wanted to focus right away on Alaska. So we just showed our viewers, Senator Murkowski had quite an extensive kind of Q&A with reporters. And then her opponent, Kelly Tshibaka, kind of had this roundtable at a diner speaking with her supporters. What's this race looking like? And give us the dynamics there in Alaska.
Yeah, this is a race that will not be settled until November. So two Republicans so far, Liz Cheney has not likely to join them, vote to impeach Donald Trump and retain their nominations for November. They both were in states with top two voting, in California and Washington. And Alaska has a new voting system, a four candidate ranked choice, where in this primary, four candidates who get the most votes will proceed to a November election. In that election, voters will rank them from 1 to 4, and somebody will crack 50%. There's complicated rules for that. But they're all why Lisa Murkowski, like Dan Newhouse in Washington, and like David Valadao in California, why she has a shot at winning, maybe getting out of her Republican primary and bringing her case to the entire electorate.
So, Dave, what you're saying is, but for ranked choice, Lisa Murkowski's fate tonight would be up in question. She might lose, but for this new voting system.
Yes, and she did lose in 2010. She lost the Republican primary in a tremendous upset during a year of the Tea Party surge, which has a lot of echoes, foreshadowing maybe of what we're seeing this year in terms of Republican voter anger, nominating candidates who were not electable in November. She lost a primary. She ran as a write-in candidate and won, and since then she always was a fairly independent member of the Republican conference. Has become more independent since then. Voted against the party on some key Supreme Court nominations, for example. So she always benefits from getting in front of the entire Alaska electorate, which is one where Republicans win elections, but not by landslide margins. Usually, in the last few races, the race for governor was a single-digit race. The race for president was about 10 points. She has a chance to win, she thinks, with a small number of Republican MAGA voters, with every Democrat, with every independent. And that is Kelly Tshibaka's challenge, is she's running as the Trump Republican candidate in Alaska. Can that get her 50% against Murkowski? We won't find out tonight. We'll find out in November.
Okay, Dave, we're just looking at this event Kelly Tshibaka had earlier today. Give us a sense of who she is. Where did she come from? Has she run for office before? Has she served in office before? She's backed by former President Trump. We know how outspoken Lisa Murkowski has been about former President Trump. So what are her chances, and who is she?
Yeah, she served in the Alaska government in the Trump administration. She did not have a huge political profile in Alaska until she jumped into this race. She jumped in after Lisa Murkowski voted to impeach Donald Trump. But there were other issues where Murkowski had crossed Republican voters in Alaska. I mentioned the Supreme Court nomination fights. Her vote was not necessary in the end. She didn't block any Republican nominees. But the fact that she voted against people who have delivered on things a lot that conservatives love, like the end of Roe versus Wade, that was always going to be a problem for her. And Tshibaka has run as a down-the-line MAGA Trump conservative who would vote more like Lindsey Graham, more like the rest of the pro-Trump Republican Party. So that is the race that has happened. It's actually a few races in Alaska that are breaking down the same lines. In the House race, something similar is happening. In the race for governor, Governor Mike Dinwiddie, who's very conservative, still has conservative primary challengers because he did not immediately pull back pandemic restrictions during COVID, and he did not promote ivermectin. That's another candidate's issue. So Murkowski, in all these Alaska primaries, is a huge gathering on the right, but the ranked choice system is limiting their ability to just win in a low turnout primary.
That's so interesting. So, okay, let's focus on this other race we want to talk about, and that is the congressional primary in Alaska. Alaska only has one congressional seat. A very familiar face running in that, and that, of course, is the former governor, Sarah Palin. So this was the seat vacated by the passing of the longtime Congressman Don Young a couple of months ago. What is this race looking like? Does Sarah Palin have a chance?
She has a chance in one of the scenarios. She has a better chance. So there are three candidates in this race because a fourth made the runoff, dropped out, and there's nothing judges allowed on the ballot after that. So there are three candidates. There is Nick Begich, a member of the Begich political family in Alaska, but a Republican, where most of his family are Democrats. Mary Peralta, a former state legislator and Democrat, and there's Palin. Palin in polls, which are very tough to conduct in Alaska, has been tied with the Democrat. If she gets into a top two election with her, she loses to Begich, and Begich beats the Democrat either way. So Begich has been seen as the favorite in whatever happens in November, as long as he gets first or second place tonight.
You know, for a state like Alaska, they sure have a lot of political dynasties, the Murkowskis, the Begiches, the Palins. I find that so interesting. Okay, let's move, I guess, a little bit east to Wyoming. Let's talk about the main race there, and that, of course, is Liz Cheney's seat. Many people think she's doomed. A lot of the polling suggests she's doomed, and doomed by a lot. What say you? And let's talk about her opponent as well. Who is Harriet Hageman?
Harriet Hageman is a longtime Republican environmental lawyer, suing more on behalf of energy companies, involved in Republican Party membership politics, the RNC, for a long time, and actually opposed Donald Trump when he was running for president in 2016, but was one of those Republicans who opposed him because she worried he wasn't really conservative in office, a very loyal Trump supporter who cleared the field almost, and with Trump's help, when she got in against Liz Cheney. Cheney was always going to face a challenge this year. Hageman had the credibility, the donor connections to blow past some lesser-known state senators and state legislators who were starting to run against Cheney. And she has, as you were setting up, led decisively in polling. The polls can be wrong, but she has been up in the last few university polls 25 to 35 points, with a huge majority of Republicans voting for Democrats who can, if they want to, register vote in the Republican primary, and with independents basically split. And this is such a Republican state. This is one of the most Republican states in the country, that just holding on to the Republican base is enough to push Hageman far ahead of Cheney.
Okay, so we're looking at a picture of her voting today. We also have this tweet from Cheney on her account. She said, "Proud to cast my ballot today. The challenges we are facing require serious leaders who will abide by their oath and uphold the Constitution no matter what." And then just, I believe, last week, her father, former Vice President Dick Cheney, cut this ad for his daughter. Let's just listen into what this said.
In our nation's 246-year history, there has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. He tried to steal the last election using lies and violence to keep himself in power after the voters had rejected him. He is a coward. A real man wouldn't lie to his supporters. He lost his election, and he lost big. I know it, he knows it, and deep down, I think most Republicans know it. Lynn and I are so proud of Liz for standing up for the truth, doing what's right, honoring her oath to the Constitution, when so many in our party are too scared to do so. Liz is fearless. She never backs down from a fight. There is nothing more important she will ever do than lead the effort to make sure Donald Trump is never again near the Oval Office. And she will succeed. I am Dick Cheney. I proudly voted for my daughter. I hope you will too.
I'm Liz Cheney, and I approve this message.
Okay, so Dave, that was quite something. We don't really see her father very often, at least publicly, and he was with her today as she cast her vote. Let's talk about, and I know we might be getting ahead of ourselves, in the event Liz Cheney does lose, what did she ultimately lose? She had a very bright career. Remember, she was ousted from her top leadership position in the House Republican Conference, all for her role in the January 6th committee. She's only one of 2 Republicans on the committee. The work that committee is doing persists to this day. The hearings have happened all summer. But talk about her, I guess, political rise and fall. She's very young. What do you think she's going to do next if she loses?
Well, you're right. She had a very quick rise through the ranks of the party. She was elected in 2016. Even then, though, she had opposition from the more libertarian, anti-interventionist wing of the party. In her first race, Rand Paul was spending money endorsing an opponent, going after Cheney's basically for the Iraq War, for neoconservatism, for that foreign policy stance, and she kept that stance in the Republican minority. She was rising in the ranks, but she was clashing with the Trump doctrine, the sort of more nationalist Trump approach to the world, even before January 6th, even before she became a critic. She had enemies in the party. Once, as you're saying, she both impeached Trump and voted to be on the January 6th commission to create it and to join it. that severed her relationship with Republican voters, but it was a little more tenuous. And one thing you're hearing from reporters on the ground, like Paul Kane from the Post, she had moved back to the state from Virginia to run for office ahead of 2014. She always had an issue, in addition to the ideological baggage and the arguments about foreign policy. She always had an issue as being seen as a member of a political family that had left the state and come back out of convenience.
Yeah, and of course, just back to her opponent, Harriet Hageman. Once upon a time, Harriet Hageman endorsed Liz Cheney. And
That's
Harriet
right.
Hageman as well was quite vocal against Donald Trump in early 2016 as well. So it's interesting to see how these tides change when these opponents are faced up against each other. Last point I want to make about Wyoming. How do you think turnout is going to be? Do you think we're going to see independents, Democrats vote for Cheney, but is this going to be the blowout that a lot of people are thinking it's going to be?
Yeah, polling at the end of the race actually expanded to cover not just Republican voters, but pollsters took a sample of every voter who could vote in Wyoming, because this is getting a lot of attention. When I was in the state when Donald Trump visited to campaign for Hageman, it was far more just chatter, far more physical representation of Cheney sentiment, anti-Cheney sentiment than you see in a normal primary, frankly, and I cover a lot of them. So turnout was it clears about 110,000 in a high turnout year for Wyoming Republicans. It is likely to be higher tonight if any of the patterns that we've seen across the country this year hold. We've seen a lot of enthusiasm from conservative voters who came into the party because of Donald Trump, or voters who agreed with that sort of America First mindset. And we're seeing high turnout with suburban liberals, with urban liberals. In Wyoming, I think you're going to see some of those liberals who live in Jackson, the smaller number who live in Cheyenne, Cody, but basically the small pockets of Democrats that do exist. I think you might also see even a couple thousand coming into the primaries to support Cheney out of convenience and out of terror of a MAGA Republican representing the state. They were happy, as much as they disagree with Cheney, they were happy as Democrats to have one of the Republicans who was a bulwark against Trump.
Yeah. Dave Weigel, last thoughts. You're always so great to break these races down as we get very close to November. But is there something maybe I didn't bring up that you'll be watching tonight?
You covered it. I would again emphasize that the House special election, the fate of Sarah Palin, will not be known until the end of August. And there's also a primary that's on the same ballot for the November election for that seat. So Palin could, if you're a fan of Sarah Palin's story, she's going to be on the ballot until the votes are counted in 2 weeks, and then she's on the ballot again in November, most likely.
All right, Dave Weigel, we appreciate your time and your insight and your reporting, and we'll talk to you again.
Thank you very much.